Hello everyone, welcome to this review for week 17. We are at the end of April and Luke, you're still with me. Thank you.
Still here.
Still here. And is it raining where you are?
It looks like it might. It's not very nice outside.
Probably the
I
first.
apologise in advance if anyone hears any funny noises because we're in the middle of having a load of building work in our front garden and our back garden, and the builder's drilling with a big pneumatic drill.
Yeah. Oh dear. Well, I don't hear anything. It looks a bit gross outside, but we probably desperately need the rain. It hasn't rained in like 3 weeks or so.
No, it hasn't.
So hopefully we'll have quite a few people joining us today for this verse review at an earlier time, which I think is a bit easier for people from India and other parts, east of us. So yeah, let's crack into it. I've sent you a list and I think we're going to go from the bottom to the top in chronological order. Oh no, sorry, top to bottom.
Okay.
I don't know, things are all over the place. Let's start with Jessica Moon and see what Jessica has created. And I think I'm going to just close the door because Andy is sneezing. Okay, so this week I haven't looked at the data. As usual, I'm a bit behind. Price parity in the US. Have you looked at the data yourself, Luke?
I haven't. It's the first week this month where I haven't been able to do the viz or do my viz before we've done this review, so I've just had too much on. So I will try and do it perhaps on Friday. I've got the day off tomorrow, so yeah, I haven't even looked at the data yet.
Yeah. So I don't really actually. Maybe let me bring it up quickly on data.world. Regional price parity per state. So this is for the US. How do regional prices in America compare? And I'll just open this viz in a new picture. That's the original we're working with. And I'm guessing there is 100. My understanding, yeah, okay. So the average is 100, and there are some states that are above average and some that are below. So I guess that's quite simple. It's like an index, yeah. Okay, good. Okay, where were we? We were with Jessica's viz. Where the skies are so blue and the price parity is good. I don't know where that is. I'm guessing Alabama, because it's the only one I can see mentioned. There were 2 states whose all items regional price parity were lower than Alabama's. Those states are labeled. I don't know if Jessica is from Alabama. I don't know the shape of different states in the US, apart from probably Florida and Texas, to be honest.
Yeah.
I'm sure that outside of America, most people wouldn't recognize states, especially when they're not next to the other states. There's some Vision tooltip thing going on. What's your first impression here, Luke?
So I kind of like it for a piece of art, data art. I think there's, I get what she's trying to do with the sunny sky and blue sky and the sun being the chart. I mean, and I think it's cool. It's nice stylistically. I mean, there's always a question in my mind with these sort of radial charts, particularly when you're looking at time, whether they could be represented in a different way, perhaps. Actually, each ray of the sun is actually a state, isn't it? So that's, I don't know. It's pretty effective, I think. You could maybe consider a regular bar and bar chart, or perhaps a barbell chart or something for the red and the yellow values instead, California. Or the comparison between the red state and Alabama. I don't know.
I personally, I don't understand it at all. I don't know, like the red it looks like matches, but of different length. Is the red how much further than Alabama different states were? Like how much higher they were?
Yeah, so the yellow part is always Alabama, by the looks of it, and then the red is the state that they're comparing, that she's comparing to Alabama. And I mean, it's like a bar and bar, I guess. So there's 2 states where.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, Mississippi and Arkansas were were greater than California. Everything else is less than California. Well,
I find this a lot of work.
Yeah.
And I don't even know what I'm getting here, because there's no explanation of price parity. It's unless there is, if you hover over the icon, the little eye symbol. I just find this is too much work for me to explore. I don't understand I'm guessing the picture is from somewhere in Alabama, but it's not something I would really recognize. This one for me is too much effort to understand.
Yeah, there's also a slider for the year as well, which I would find if you're comparing data by year, or if you're filtering data by year and you have a slider, you then you get change blindness. You have to think of or remember the values from one year. When you move to another year, you have to then kind of compare them in your head to the previous year, because you don't have both values on the same sheet. So I think maybe rather than using a slider for the dates, maybe there could have been some sort of line chart in here as well, and then taken an average value over all of the years for the sunburst chart. I don't know, maybe that's an idea, but I think there could be a little bit more context here as well.
Okay.
Maybe she wanted to experiment building this type of chart.
And that's fine too. I guess I'm just giving my honest feedback of I don't understand it. Okay, let's move on to Sam Eppley. And Sahid, who's on the chat, I don't know if you've recognized, but Andy isn't here. So if you have special requests, I first suggest you do some Googling and some practicing, and then maybe just message him. Okay, the most expensive places to live in the US.
I like this. I like the formatting. It's really clean and clear.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm just waiting for Tableau Public to load so I can have a play with the actual dashboard. But from the image, I like the way that a particular thing is highlighted in the line charts, and everything else is grayed out. That's normally a really good technique to use.
Yeah, I agree. One thing I do find here is, maybe that's the topic in general. So, most expensive place to live. Is there any taking into account of salaries as well? Like, I understand that in second and third place is California for highest rent, but I'm sure they have higher salaries than, let's say, Arkansas or Minnesota or other places. So, does the price parity index take that into account? I'm guessing not.
Yeah, I don't know. Let's assume it doesn't.
Yeah. But anyway, the design is good here. I like you said, where one state is highlighted. I wonder, so it would be great to have the map at the bottom drive. Oh, it does. Okay, it just takes a little while.
I do find it's quite big. I think maybe it could be consolidated a little bit, because you have to kind of scroll down to the bottom to, at least on my screen anyway, it appears really big. You scroll down to the bottom and the line charts almost disappear, then you have to scroll back up after you've clicked on a state.
Yeah. And then, so at the bottom, it says price parity by state for selected year. I would make the dynamic, because selected year sounds a bit clunky. Like, could you just put the field in there that gives me the year? It says hover to learn more, update the visualized metric at right. I don't know what that means. Click on a state, update the selected state. What does that mean? Does that mean click on a state to update the selected state? Or click on a state, comma, update the selected state? I want more clarity here, a bit more correct grammar and stuff. Full sentences, I guess.
Yeah, there's a typo there. It must have added two. But I really like the design. I can see this, printed out as an infographic type thing, as a poster or something like that. I really like the way he's gone about having a dark background, and then you've got the sort of nice curved corner main light green bit where the charts are. I think it makes it stand out really well.
Yeah. One suggestion I have is for price parity. Most people probably wouldn't know off the top of their heads what it means. Like some people might be like, I think that's what it means. But include a definition because you've got these big numbers, but what does it mean? So to say the average is 100, this basically shows are different states above or below the average for the whole country. Yeah, I would include that somewhere.
Yeah, I mean, I like the way that it's almost designed in columns as well. So we've got the big numbers at the top, and then the line charts underneath relate to those big numbers. So we can see the 100, benchmark line to all the charts, so you can see visually whether a state is above or below that pretty easily for each of those different categories.
Yeah,
I
absolutely.
really like it.
Yeah, the
Nice
design is really good.
Really good.
Okay, then we have Regina, her first dashboard for Makeover Monday and ever. So first Tableau dashboard, I think, there's a link if you go into the comments. There's a link as the first comment. Okay. US regional price parity. I think same suggestion again. So you've got price index USA equals 100 in the bottom right corner. Just move that closer to the title so that people immediately understand, and maybe make it a sentence to say, across the US the average is 100 and this shows blah 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 blah. What do you think of the use of color here and the layout?
Well, firstly, Regina, well done for creating your first dashboard in Tableau. Hopefully it's the first of many. I think there's a few things to bear in mind here. So from my perspective, titles are really important. You haven't really got a main dashboard title to set the scene as to what's going on. The highlight table heat map on the right hand side could also do with a title as well.
Yeah.
The use of color, I'd much prefer to see a sequential color palette being used here rather than a stepped diverging one, because it almost makes it look like it's representing something categorical rather than intensity of value. I'd much rather see a sequential palette, so the same shade or different shades of the same color rather than distinct colors, because with although there is a tipping point here of 100, so at least there is a definitive threshold whereby the color will change between blue and red. And I think generally more details in the title, guide your user a little bit, try and make them more accessible, more interesting to the user, to encourage your user to jump in and look at the analysis that you created. Also, it's quite exploratory as well. Isn't necessarily a bad thing depending on the context of when you're creating it, but it's really up to the user in this case to perform the analysis on the dashboard. I think maybe you could suggest places to look, or maybe highlight any interesting values that don't jump out, that sort of thing.
Yeah. And one thing I would say is that in Tableau, formatting goes a long way. I think the defaults are fine, but they haven't evolved for the last, I don't know. I've used it for 8 years. They haven't really evolved much. So getting rid of some of the grid lines behind, maybe not making the state names all bold, adding a bit more space between your charts, and just tidying up a few of those like labels. So does California, do they all need 2 decimal points? 1 is probably enough. Maybe you don't even need a decimal point at all. Some of that makes a big difference. It's a bit of extra work, but it makes a difference in what it looks like. And I prefer, personally, with heat maps, I try to have the cells be all quite square, so it makes it a lot taller, but it just looks, visually, it looks a bit neater when they're square. So just a few suggestions there for Regina. Okay.
Good stuff.
And then we have Jared. So there were quite a few hex maps, and I've tried to only include very few so that we're not that we're not constantly commenting on the same things. But I figured, this could be an interesting one to talk about. So we have the 10 most and least expensive states to live in the US for all items. What's all items? Again, stuff needs to be explained. Think of people looking at this viz as they've never seen the data. They probably don't know what Make of Monday is. They probably don't know what the price parity index is. You didn't use that word, so that's fine. But what is all items? Is it like houses? Is it consumables? Is it food? That needs to be explained, because I think that's just not a really helpful term. And it's nice that you let people choose a category, but do they have to? Like, I wonder with this topic whether people understand just using one of them is the easiest for them. So I personally would think rent, because goods, again, is that food, non-food, cars, like what counts as goods? But rent is pretty self-explanatory. It's like when you don't own the place and you just pay rent. So if I change this to rent, so we now have the thing over time. A couple of points I want to make before handing over. One is the colors are really similar in terms of the opacity, hue, whatever all these things are, saturation. So you've got dark blue and dark green, and they're very similar, and it's not that easy to differentiate between the two of them at a first glance. And the other one is because this is so large, I can just fit them all onto one screen, but I don't see the difference, because by the time my eye goes, from 2008 over to 2010, I forget what 2008 looked like. So this is not an easy way for me to actually make a comparison and judge how things might have changed. I see that Alaska, Hawaii, and DC are always green. So that's, I think, most expensive. But I only see that because they're in those corners. So yeah, I'm not quite sure how useful it is to have them all shown at once.
Yeah, Jared said in his tweet rather that he's experimenting with making hex maps. He'd never done before, so that's cool. I mean, well done for experimenting. I'm guessing after making 12 of them here, probably an expert right now. But yeah, I agree. And actually, Eva, you and me not having looked at the data is actually quite a good thing, in terms of reviewing these, because we're not that familiar with it. So if we can't understand some of the concepts and stuff, it's quite a good, I guess, barometer for how easy a viz is to understand. Because, we are those people who don't know anything about the data. But I agree with you on the colours. I think they could be differentiated a little bit more. Essentially, this is comparing, top 10 over time. So I think some sort of line chart probably would have been better for that, or perhaps a bar chart even, filtered for top 10 for each year, or a jump plot as well. That could work too. So I think there are probably more effective ways of showing this data other than hex maps, but it's been a good exercise for building them by the looks of it. And I agree with you as well. More clarity as to what is being represented would be useful.
Yeah, absolutely.
Nice formatting. I like the sort of shady, I don't know what you call it really, because it's some sort of image where he's put the category filter touch.
Okay.
Yeah, nice design.
And then Daniel Barilaro. And there was some reason why I included this one. Oh yeah, I think the main reason is because it's like easier. It's easy to see. It's nice and simple. So what states had the highest and lowest cost of living in 2019? I guess with the colors, he uses, the 0 points. So basically it's the 100 mark. Everything above is red and everything below is blue. Now, what I would say, there's national average is mentioned in text. Cost of everyday goods and services is national average. So that's nice. Maine and Delaware.
I'd like to see the text being visualized a bit more.
Mm-hmm.
I always feel it kind of takes away from the visuals if you have to read text or too much text which contains the analysis. I think maybe you could have had some more kind of big numbers, or there'd be better ways to highlight, the various states that he's talking about, other than having it in blocks of text on the right hand side.
Yeah. Yeah, agreed. And at the very least, maybe connecting those boxes to the relevant states, because, I then have to go over and I might not know what the abbreviation for Mississippi is. So, as I'm looking around, it's like, is it MS? Yeah, I can figure that out. But if the text for Mississippi, Arkansas, and Alabama was like under the hex map and actually had arrows going or like lines, that might be a bit easier.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Otherwise, nice and neat.
At least he's color coded the text as well for the high, low, and middle values.
And then we have Raul, and we have a small multiple viz. I don't know. It's like, it doesn't really tell me anything. All I see is lots of state names, lots of colors, and lots of lines. But it could be a box of candy for all I know. Like there's the lines, like I don't see them in relation to each other so easily, and the axis on the y-axis on the left just seems to be repeating, but I don't really know how to read this. And I'm putting on my layperson hat, like sure I can figure it out, but I don't find this very insightful or useful.
No, I think first of all, the use of colour, so there are more than 20 states, obviously, so colours start repeating themselves. And I find also that the lines on the 100, to my eyes, are forming different planes in the data. So that I'm actually looking at those as being the kind of borders of each row of numbers type thing. We're actually, I don't know, just kind of confuses my eyes a little bit. Also, tooltips, there's a bit more of those, I think. We've got obviously some of the names in the tooltip, some of the column names haven't been changed. So, columns along geo name 4, rows along geo name 3. That's going to confuse people probably. So, spend more time on those. But maybe as an exercise to create a small multiple chart, this was successful. But I think there could be more to kind of segment it and give the viewer some sort of perspective on where the axes start and finish, because it just looks like one continuous one on the left hand side.
And I'd also say the average is not $100. The average is 100, just as a number. So that's an index. It's not an actual price. So that's incorrect there. Okay. Ashley is next with her map. And what I wanted to suggest here is when you contrast this normal map of the US to the hex maps, one thing should be very obvious, that it's quite hard to see some of the small states on the East Coast.
Mm-hmm.
And, places like, Texas here doesn't dominate so much because it's quite a light color, but some of the larger sizes, or states that are the larger sizes, they just look so dominant because of their size, rather than the contributions they make to this.
Great data set for a hex map, definitely.
Yeah.
But I kind of like this. She's done well to get Alaska and Hawaii in there. So I'm typically with Tableau maps, when you have Alaska and Hawaii in there, the scale and the context of the map gets very distorted. So it's nice that she's included those separately. But I think a hex map's more effective, definitely, particularly for the smaller states, obviously. But this is nice and clear in terms of nice and clean in terms of the formatting.
Yeah, it's still a really neat map how she's designed it.
Yeah.
Okay. And then we have Michael, and we have another map, but it looks very different. And oh, this is quite small. Let me make this a bit larger. Okay, prices for goods and services in California. So this is the one problem I find with Tableau when you want to use, kind of filters or parameters in text, but also dynamic fields. Formatting is almost impossible to make it look really neat because here, like the alignment to get that right is really hard. And then we have red and green. And I'm going to let you comment on red and green because you've been doing that in the last few weeks.
Yeah, so red-green colour blindness is the most common form of colour blindness. Tableau normally defaults to the blue and orange colour scheme in this situation. And it used to always be red and green, and they changed it. But yeah, there's a great colour blindness simulator, Colour Oracle, online. And Michael, I really encourage you to download it. It's completely free, runs on Windows, Mac, and Linux as well. And just have a look at your map in that and see how a red-green colourblind person would view that, because I think you'll be surprised because you won't be able to see any difference. It'll all be differing shades of green. But so yeah, check that out. And I'd advise running all of your visualizations through that where possible. Also down at the bottom, we've got a scroll bar as well. Again, with red and green as we scroll down it. I'm not a fan of scroll bars, to be honest, because information can and does hide off the screen when you have a scroll bar. So think about maybe how you could represent that data differently in the bar chart, or change the formatting and have the bar chart down maybe the right-hand side of the viz instead. That would also make your map bigger. I also think you don't need the labels on the map as well. So that makes it a lot busier.
Yeah, and especially because the map is quite small, it doesn't fill up the whole space. And that's actually something that, look, maybe you know the solution to this, but when you zoom in, he's got the control bar. So if I zoom in, it's too big. There is no way of zooming in just enough to fill the space, but not too much that you can't see everything. Is there a way to do that in Tableau to control how much zooming there's going on?
Not that I'm aware of, no.
Because I found that something really annoying in a recent viz I built. I'm like, I just want to zoom in a little bit. You know how in Google Maps you just use your fingers to pinch it? Like, I want to be able to do that and not just have this step-by-step thing.
Yeah, I mean, as far as I'm aware, you can only use, you obviously use the controls on the map or use the wheel on your mouse to scroll it.
Yeah, okay.
So yeah, look at the colours, lose the labels on the map, and think about formatting. I think you could have a big title for your dashboard as well, explaining, as we've been talking about, a little bit more about the metrics, about what's happening in the set as well.
Okay. Okay, then we have Neha, and this is another small multiple, but this time instead of the lines, we have the whole an area chart, and I can just see. So EK says scroll wheel on the map. It doesn't work, at least not well. But also I don't have a scroll wheel. I have a magic touchpad, so can't do that. But anyway, here we are with Neha's viz. So this one I find easier to look at than the lines, because I have more, like, visually there's more area. But I still, like, it's quite busy with all the labeling, and the only ones I can really compare are the ones that are in the same row, and that's just based on alphabetical order.
Yeah, I find this quite busy. I think more could have been done with the formatting. There are some, at least on my computer, where the labels aren't visible. So New Hampshire and District of Columbia, the labels don't fit on. So I like the idea, but I think also formatting some of the labels are justified in different ways. It's probably, I haven't downloaded the workbook, but there's probably quite a lot of manual work has gone into this, I imagine. Also, the tooltips could have been a little bit better, I think.
Yeah, they're not quite neat. And then New Hampshire and DC are missing their labels for some reason.
Yeah. So I think she could have allocated a little bit more space to make sure that those labels actually fit on, or done something else with the labels to maybe make the font a little bit smaller or whatever to make sure they all fit on. I'd like to see a little bit more space between these charts as well, because it's a bit of a kind of onslaught of information.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Okay. And then we have Aditya. And I mean, with this map, okay, so yeah, that's not too big. It's a huge map, but the US themselves are very small in comparison to the rest. Like there's a lot of Canada, there's a lot of China, Latin America, Mexico, Colombia. You see Greenland takes up a lot of space.
It's the Alaska effect, isn't it?
Yeah.
If maybe split out Alaska and Hawaii, as we saw just now, it helps to minimize the other kind of noise from other countries that you're not so interested in.
Yeah. There's actually a question. I need to quickly jump back to the previous viz, and I didn't even look at the numbers. But totally yes, I wasn't paying attention. I'm a little bit tired. So Amanda makes a very good point. So Neha has added all of the values for all of the years, which you can't. It can only ever be one value at a time. So it should only be maybe the most recent one, and so you can't have 491%. Like that's it's just, I don't know what the percentage is anyway. So Hawaii is the most expensive, 5,896 above the national average. That's just incorrect. So only do it for 1 year at a time.
Right.
Maybe the most recent one or the first one or whatever, whichever one you choose, because this is about the comparison to the average, and you can't sum up all the years. Never really sum up all the years. There's very few use cases for doing that. Okay, so let's jump over to Aditya, who didn't sum up all the years, but seems to have summed up all the 4 different categories, which is also incorrect. So you can do just rent, that's fine, or just services, just goods, or all items, but not all 4 together. That's wrong.
I like the design in terms of it almost looks like an old newspaper or something like that. It's kind of it's sort of sepia kind of colour. Be more instruction as to what to do with the icons. Also, one of the icons, the rent icon, almost overlaps Hawaii as well.
Yeah.
So that could be.
It looks like Hawaii is like smoke coming out of the chimney that doesn't exist, but
I was actually looking for Hawaii. I couldn't see it, and then I spotted it almost behind the rent icon. But I think for maps like this, definitely do something with Alaska, if not Hawaii as well. Tooltips again, and pretty kind of default formatting. Please do stuff with your tooltips. I love tooltips when they're nicely formatted. It almost feels a bit unfinished if tooltips are just in their default formatting and values. So
it's a bit like eating takeaway out of a takeaway container instead of putting it on a plate. Like sometimes that's sometimes if you're drunk that's fine, but if you want to have a proper meal, now let me show you something to everyone who's on here, because it's not like we haven't thought about this. There is actually a checklist. There is a visualization checklist that let's open this in a new tab that I've put together that you can download, and have you formatted your tooltips is on there. So if you want your visits to be better, these are some helpful tips to go through of, have you thought of this? Have you thought of that? It's going to be important unless you just want to visualize data and not really, make it stand out. But go to makeofwonder.co.uk, scroll down and download it. Okay.
I just find a little light goes out inside me if I see a viz which looks really nice, and then you hover over something and the tooltips are just sort of as they were when you first opened Tableau. It's like, oh no, why did you do that? Why didn't you
Yeah.
5 minutes, just making them more interesting and rounding off the formatting.
It's like when you meet someone really interesting, you know, you have that first impression where like, wow, and then they start talking about politics and you're like, oh my God, this is not good. Like, you know, it's such a contrast to what you expected, because you see this first impression of a verse that, you know, looks good, that you're like, oh wow, they've done all these things. And then this is the detail that was overlooked. And it makes you question the other stuff, right? It makes you think, oh, did they forget? Did they not bother? If they forgot, why did they forget? And yeah. Okay.
It just makes me feel a little bit sad. It's
A little bit sad inside, yeah.
I told you, my dog, when I'm eating and I don't give her any food, she looks at me in a sad way.
Yeah, and then do you give her food?
No, sometimes.
Yeah, we just put Maggie in her crate, and we can't see her while we eat at the table, so it doesn't really apply. She can't give us the sad puppy eyes. Okay, so next one is interesting. First submission from Arpov, and we will have some feedback, but first, welcome and good on you for putting your first submission up for some, you know, scrutiny. That is pretty brave.
Yeah.
EK says finding unformatted tooltips is like seeing a cameraman or film crew in a movie. I get it, but I love the behind the scenes stuff. Like, I would rather know how the movie was made than watch the movie. I think I'd rather watch the behind the scenes stuff, but that's just me. So what do you think of this tree map?
I'm just looking, actually. It's, yeah, I think, do you need the labels? Do you need 2 decimal places? Tooltips again.
What is UN? There isn't a state that's called UN, is there? Has the abbreviation UN?
That's a good point, yeah. Use proper state names, because people won't necessarily be that familiar with all of them. So, don't know what SO is either.
Yeah. Plus, I don't know if a tree map is really a chart you could use here, because it doesn't, you know, a tree map is passed to the whole, so it should sum up to 100% or whatever the complete thing is. Now, these are comparison between states. They're not summing up all the states to one total price index. So I would say it doesn't really work with a tree map. Plus, it makes it pretty much impossible to compare, because if I look, so I've just changed to goods, and I've got the first, there's almost like there's a column going for the most expensive states. And the challenge here is they all have the same width. They might have different heights. I'm not sure. They have different colors, but you can't really compare them except for the number. If it's a number, then you might as well just make a table. So, yeah, I wouldn't use a tree map here.
I think the title suggests some sort of rank, so a bar chart would definitely be easier to understand it.
Yeah.
But yeah, just again, well done for putting up your first viz on Makeover Monday. But just have a think. Imagine, put yourself in the position of someone who has no idea about the data set, has no idea about data visualization, is a complete newbie in terms of, you know, interpreting this stuff, and just think, if you were that person, would you be able to understand what you're publishing and make sure that it's as clear as possible what you're representing?
Yeah.
I'm also not a massive fan of the slider to change, to change between the different dimensions as well. So.
Yeah, because you don't know what's coming, so it's like, why should I bother? There might be nothing interesting there. Like, you want to display them all either with a drop down or in a list that's visible.
Yeah. So if I'm on all items, then I want to look at rents, I have to scroll all the way across to the right hand side, but I don't necessarily know that that's there.
Yeah. Okay. Okay, and then we have Jaya Sankar. I did want to make one point actually while this is loading, that there is an expectation that people do something with our feedback. The reason I say that is I have noticed far too many visualizations where, as I go through the hashtag on Fridays to look for favorites, there's not even a response to say whether people have seen the feedback. And this is also part of the reason why we're not going to have this review in May, because on the one hand I want a break, but also people just aren't really doing anything with the feedback. So it's like, well, if we're talking to a wall, let's just see how we go without it, and if people even know this. With that being said, let's look at this one, because again, this has everything summed up, and Andy did actually comment on Monday, I believe, on Twitter to say, you know, you might want to look at your numbers because they're wrong. I'm not even sure where to start here. Total of description. I mean,
I mean, Joe Sankar, I would really suggest, again, like I said just now, put yourself in the position of someone who doesn't know anything about this, and would they be able to understand it? And I mean, aside from the summing up of the numbers, I mean, there's no chart titles really, and the filters x-axis A, x-axis B, there's nothing. You have to scroll right the way down to the bottom of the diverging bar chart to see that that's actually what they affect. Again, tooltips, and in that diverging bar chart, we've got a field that says GeoFips. So for Alaska, it's 02000. Absolutely no idea what that means. Also, the line chart, no title again, and you know, the pie chart or donut chart in the top left, all the segments are the same size.
the line chart has a color legend that has 1, 2, 3, 4, but there's no explanation of what 1, 2, 3 means. This feels a bit like a dashboard that uses just a bunch of random charts that were produced using Show Me and just thrown on a page like this. And that is actually, this is a bit of a tangent, a problem I see with Tableau. It's now so easy to use and to produce something that we get visualizations like this where either the person didn't understand the data or the topic, or it's literally just visualizing data without any thought being put into it. Because this is actually not, you know, like, there's no analysis that's gone into it. I doubt the person has read the article that came with the data.
I mean, the line chart makes, on further inspection, makes no sense whatsoever as well, because it shouldn't be a line chart because it's on the x-axis.
What is the x-axis?
It's not temporal data. It's GeoFips, whatever they are. And then you've got a year, 2008, on the axis. Yeah, I mean, I'm trying not to be nasty here, but I think it seems unfinished to me, and it doesn't seem like there's been a huge amount of thought that's gone into representing the data clearly. And yeah,
it feels to me like someone jumped in a car, they were told to go straight, and they just did donuts in the parking lot, and it's like, none of it gives me anything useful, because even the one chart that actually has the correct data, that's the bottom right, it has description, line code, all items good, so like there's 1, 2, 3, 4. I don't know what that means. Like, the one chart that is correct is not explained. So quite frankly, I would say start again, and think about what you want to show, and make sure you understand the numbers before you put them on a visualization that's out on the internet, and and you put your name against it. So yeah.
Guys, I don't know who is using Show Me, or if Show Me was used here, but if you do use Show Me, I would really recommend not using it, because yes, it's a kind of chart wizard, but particularly if you're starting out with Tableau, you don't get any appreciation of how Tableau works if you use Show Me. And to be honest, most of the time with Show Me, it doesn't give you the chart in the format that you want anyway. You end up having to swap around fields, or it'll give you the chart type, but then you'll have to change what's on the axes, or you'll have to mess around with it somehow. And I think really the only excuse for using Show Me probably is with a box and whisker plot, because they're Obviously, you can create them with reference lines and reference bands, but they're a bit fiddly and they take a bit of time. So
yeah, I like food and I like food analogies. Show me is a little bit like, you've just started college and you're like, oh my God, I'm just going to eat at the cafeteria every day. But that's not going to work for the 60 years that you're going to live after college. So if you want to sustain yourself, you need to learn how to cook. And using Show Me is getting takeaway food in the cafeteria, and not using Show Me teaches you how to cook. Like, it teaches you how Tableau works. So as soon as you are even slightly ready, just say, okay, I'm never going, like, the Show Me window should be hidden, and then just start dragging fields, because as things happen in Tableau, you will figure out, so if I do that, that happens. And one thing, there are very simple things, but they all have rules behind them. If you double click on a measure, it's going to create a bar chart. If you double click on a dimension, it's going to start with a table. And as you explore these things, you'll see the kind of patterns behind it, and you'll start to really understand it. So it's what Luke said, it's the best way of getting better at Tableau is not using Show Me and just building your charts from scratch, so you truly understand how they work, and also the relationship between the different fields.
Also, in Tableau's official courses, unless they've changed, I haven't taught one for a while, but that they don't really touch on Show Me. They say that it's there, but it's not included in any context other than the box and whisker part.
Yeah. And Kimberly actually made a really good suggestion, saying that, this probably applies to anyone who's a bit uncertain about how to use the data. Don't feel that you have to publish a visualization on Sunday or Monday. Join Andy sessions on Monday, the Watch Me Viz, or watch it on demand, because the first thing he always does is figure out what the data means, unless it is totally obvious and super simple. And you can watch his thought process. And, he's been doing this for well over a decade, and he still does it the same way, where, he explores the different fields, he goes back to the article, he reads a bit, and only once he's understood does he actually build something with it.
Understanding the level of detail of your data set is, it's fundamental, really. And, it sounds simple, but figure out what one row in your data set means, because it may mean that you can just count the rows. If each row is an event, then you can just use number of records or whatever to represent the metrics, or maybe you've got a bit more complexity in your data, but the more you can understand what one row means and how the rows and different levels of detail within the data set interact, like Superstore, each row is a transaction, but then you can have multiple rows in an order, that sort of thing, and that can really help you get to grips with your data and also make your analysis more meaningful as well.
Definitely. And for me, I'm doing a bit of a challenge at the moment where I'm building a different viz each day with some Snowflake data sets. And the biggest worry I always have before I publish is, am I double counting anything? Sometimes data sets have many dimensions and you need to bring them all into the view to make sure that everything is taken care of and there's no double counting, like, for example, every country in the EU and then also the EU totals, it's those kind of things. So and looking at each dimension and what the members are is really helpful to see, should I be doing this? It takes a bit longer, but it's going to give you a really good payoff in the long run. Oh, I've got the electrician starting to drill holes. So let's move on quickly to the next one. I think we've got a couple more that we can fit in before I need to jump to another meeting. This one is from Susanna, and she's done a bar chart. And I think this is the first bar chart that we've seen today.
Yeah, I really like this from first glance. I think it's pretty informative, and you don't necessarily need to use a map if you have geographical data. I think a lot of people, when they see countries or states in the data set, their first inclination is to jump straight into a map.
Yeah.
Obviously, with this particular data set being related to the US, hex maps of the US states work very well, so that's cool. But I'm guilty of this as well, and I kind of catch myself these days questioning, do I need to use a map? Maps can look nice, but actually, is that data better represented in a non-geographical format? If it's important for the user to know where a particular state is in the US, maybe you're comparing regions or something like that, then maybe use a map. But as soon as you start doing the top N most expensive or whatever, then the bar chart you can't really go wrong with.
Yeah. I really like this. I think it doesn't necessarily need all the color, because one thing I struggle with here, and maybe this could be resolved by just making the bars not as wide, is the color block takes up about 2/3 of the lower half, and then the font is quite small. So even if I try, or when I try to read the state names and the values, I get very distracted by the color on the left. So maybe there's a better way to do that. They're just really strong colors as well. So it could just be one full gradient or something that is, just dividing above and below. But yeah, the bars don't need to be that wide. They could be much shorter as well, because there's nothing written in the bar, so it wouldn't be cut off. But just as an idea.
Yeah, I'd be tempted to give it a little bit more space as well, because the labels on the end are pretty small and they're quite bunched together as well. So I think maybe make the bars a little bit thinner and perhaps give the whole viz a little bit more space, and those labels will be kind of less busy.
Yeah.
But I really like this as a concept. I really like this one.
Yeah, agreed. Okay. We'll do one more because I do have to jump to a meeting. And I need a couple of minutes just to get ready for it. And this is from Anna. And this is a different viz. It doesn't use a map. It doesn't use bars. Cost of living across the US. So I really like this because it simplifies the data. It doesn't make it so big, tall or wide. It takes care of the different categories. And it scatters the states. And you have a highlighter with some quite neat labels in there as well.
Yeah, really, really great job, Anna. And it's cool. If these are the last two ones that we do today, then we've finished on a high. I think.
Yeah.
So, well done. I love it. It's great. And really interesting way to portray this data. And yeah, well done. I haven't really got much criticism of it, really.
I've got nothing to change here. Yeah. Cool. Well, that's nice. I'll bring our faces back for a moment to say goodbye and au revoir. So, last viz review for April. There will be a pause in May, like I said. I'm not quite sure yet about June plans. It depends a bit on work schedules and stuff. But thank you, Luke. I do want to give you a big thank you for supporting me during this month. It's been really fun, and hopefully people have enjoyed having this additional perspective. Any final words?
No, I've actually done dog favourites for this month as well. Twitter hasn't been playing ball today at all on my phone, and I don't know if my Wi-Fi's not working very well, but I'm having trouble uploading the videos. But I'll try and do that later. But the winners were UK Data.
Nice.
Well done. You've been consistently in the favourites pretty much all month, and Damola as well.
Nice,
so,
very good.
Well done. And if both of you listen to this or watch it or are watching this, then please PM me a postal address and I'll get some stuff for both of you. Also, last week, so Kevin Wee, Tom Smith and Matthew Armstrong, I posted yours today, so it should arrive hopefully over the next week or so.
Cool, excellent. Okay, with that, we're gonna sign off and take care, everyone. Somebody just asked if we're back next week. I just said no. So, no, we're not. And that's it for now. Thank you, Luke, and we'll see you soon.
Bye, everyone.